Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well on this Wednesday. I'm going to be looking at the game against FC Noah tomorrow night at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea's third UEFA Conference League game. I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong and maybe you guys disagree with me because it's weird going into this game because I'm not saying it has no relevance, but it's more in the case of the general mood, the conversations we were having post the Man United game, which were genuinely, from myself and others, frustration, and how much these games actually change that mood or have serious ramifications on the way Enzo Maresca is going to approach the Premier League game. In the case of this week and on Sunday, it's Arsenal, which is obviously a huge game at Stamford Bridge. And whether any of the players who start tomorrow night can break into that starting 11, and it's kind of warped, isn't it, because it's an opponent that Chelsea are expected to comfortably beat, as has been the case so far in this competition. I think Noah are the weakest on paper of the three we have faced so far, so it's kind of weird, isn't it, because if Chelsea win confidently and comfortably tomorrow night, everyone will kind of shrug their shoulders and go, well, obviously we'll celebrate it, but you won't walk out of it going, wow, that's a massive turning point for that player, because it's kind of a little bit warped, especially when we've seen what the B team does when they go up against a much better quality opponent in Newcastle, which of course doesn't help. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, because obviously these games are the ones where the fringe players, the B team, get to have their minutes, and you'd like to think there's a meritocracy, as has been proven with, say, Pedro Neto being able to progress to a point where he's now a first teamer in the Premier League 11. So it's not like those players can't progress into that Premier League 11. So I think that it's important that there is that pathway there for players, because you can see frustration building, especially if Chelsea's form deteriorates. I think that's where Maresca may have a problem in kind of having this clear separation between a Premier League and, say, a Conference League team. But I'm interested to hear whether you agree or disagree. We're going to look at the team news. There's some big team news and big sort of player injury updates around Cole Palmer. And then we'll look a little bit at Noah, and then I'll give you my starting 11. And mainly talking about one player that I find it absolutely astonishing has not been involved at all, really, for Enzo Maresca this season. I'll tell you who I think that is. And maybe a shining light, maybe because of one exclusion. We'll get into all of that. So Enzo Maresca's press conference was mainly dominated by questions around Cole Palmer. It's kind of been the big fear since Sunday, because Palmer got that knock very late on through a terrible challenge by Alessandro Martinez that should have been a red card. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I don't think a red card would have changed the complexion of the game. It was very late on, but he should have been sent off. So he hasn't trained in recent days, and it's kind of unknown whether he will feature against Arsenal. That is something we're going to have to wait to find out post the game tomorrow. We'll speak about that on Friday in the team selector for Arsenal. And even if Palmer was, of course, not injured or didn't have a knock, he would not be playing this game, because he's obviously not involved in the Conference League squad like Fofana and Lavia. The other player that I do think is kind of more of a setback and a fear is Jadon Sancho, because I really wanted to see how Sancho would react to being taken out of the Premier League first team. He actually hasn't played, I know for a fact he hasn't started a game since Liverpool, but I think that was the last time he played any minutes, maybe for Chelsea, because maybe he came off the bench very late on against Newcastle. He didn't obviously feature in the Carabao Cup game where he was ill. He missed the Man United game because, of course, he's on loan, and now he's missing this game, and Maresca sort of hinted that he might not be available to after the international break, which is a bit frustrating, because again, that competition, how Sancho could react given he had a decent start to his Chelsea career. Could he respond? We're going to have to wait to see whether he can respond after the international break, probably, because even if he is available on Sunday, maybe if Palmer's not available, he could make his way into that starting 11, but I think it's unlikely, so we'll see. FC Noah, obviously a team we don't know much about. Simon Johnson, I'll link the piece below, did kind of an explainer piece or looking into Chelsea's unknown opponents, and the fact that the club has actually only been running for about 7 years, already had a name change to FC Noah in 2019. The only trophies won so far are the Armenian Cup and the Armenian Super Cup in 2020. And then it's obviously referenced about Noah's Ark, the chapter from the Bible that I'm sure commentators are going to be using to the best of their pun ability tomorrow night, and luckily I won't be listening to it because I'll actually be at the bridge. But looking at them, they've got Rui Mota, Portuguese head coach who once worked for Sporting Lisbon and actually was around when Chelsea faced Sporting Lisbon in the Champions League years ago. They do have some European players, Portuguese-based players that have played for some decent clubs, but I think that there is a general expectation here that Chelsea should be winning this game comfortably. But as was the case a few months ago against Servette, that isn't always a guarantee, and it's funny seeing the FA Cup results over the weekend and that kind of FA Cup thing of, even if there is a massive disparity in level between one club and another, complacency by the favourites, kind of that willingness and determination to kind of put up your best game, and a massive event, being able to go to Stamford Bridge and play Chelsea. For them, it's even been referenced that Motta has spoken to Marco Silva and Nuno Espirito Santo, fellow Portuguese coaches in the Premier League, to try and get some insight on Chelsea. So, for Chelsea, they win this, we already feel like they're comfortably going to be in the knockout stages. And, I think in terms of what's expected from the game itself, it should be a comfortable Chelsea win. I think there has been some frustrating complacency, especially in the last home game in the Conference League, the first one against Ghent, where Ghent were relentless. I think they were well placed to kind of challenge Chelsea and didn't let the game ebb away, which is why they scored 2 goals. But even in the Panathinaikos game, I don't want to see that level drop, because for these players, especially the B team players, it's their chance to impress. It's their chance to kind of be intense and put themselves in kind of the front line and show that they have a willingness and an ability to progress into that Premier League starting 11. It's when I watch these games and I feel like Chelsea have kind of got into a safety mode where they think the game's done, it is done, but then they kind of relax and we can see the sloppy goal. I'd like to see a clean sheet tomorrow night, because I think Chelsea should be against this quality of opponent. So then we get into the 11, and 2 things I want to speak about. Firstly is whether anyone's getting relegated to the B team for this game. I think the big name I have heard in recent days, and with a lot of frustration, is Malo Gusto. Frustration over his performance in the Man United game in the first half that I did think was poor. I'm a fan of Malo Gusto. I think he's been a very good signing for Chelsea. I don't quite buy that he's been rubbish this season. I don't buy that at all. I think it was one of my concerns watching him invert that I feel is a bit of a waste of his talent, and I kind of feel like Cucurella should be inverting a lot more if out of the 2 fullbacks, because I just think Cucurella plays that role more naturally. I feel like Gusto is just a more natural kind of traditional fullback who I think is really much more imposing and more dangerous when he's able to overlap. There have been times where he's been able to overlap more when Chelsea are very dominant, but I think in the kind of that inverted role where he has to play kind of as a number 10, and he's getting into the right areas, his movement I think is good. It's just his execution has been really poor. So whether that can be improved, and Maresca clearly thinks that role should be someone who goes into a number 10, and whether eventually Reece James is going to end up playing that role as he gets more match fitness, we wait to see. But I do think Gusto is maybe the one at risk of dropping down, because I think also I'm kind of sick and tired of seeing Axel Disasi play as right back, and I know the justification will be it's FC Noah, it's not Newcastle, but I kind of think there should be some ramifications for some really bad performances, and I think that is the case for Axel Disasi. I thought he was really, really poor, scored an own goal against Newcastle. I don't like seeing him at right back, and for Gusto, maybe a chance to put himself and get himself some confidence, I think. And if you're not going to play Josh Akpom, I'd rather see a natural right back here, and then for me, what I would then see is then Cucurella would move back into the Premier League team, which I think most people think he should. The other player I want to speak about, let's do it now, because I want him to start, but I can't see him starting, and this is Carney Chukwuemeka. I am absolutely staggered how little Carney Chukwuemeka has played. I don't understand it at all. Given the output of Kinnan Dewsbury Hall, which I think has been pretty average, not outstanding to a point where you can seriously argue with me that he was a signing that was absolutely essential and no one else could provide what Kinnan Dewsbury Hall provides. I mean, maybe you're Kinnan Dewsbury Hall's number 1 fan, and fair enough, but I don't think the reality really bears that out. I think Kinnan Dewsbury Hall already looks to me like a signing who won't be here for that long, because the justification was, Enzo Maresca, a relationship with a player. He hasn't been a Jorginho. He hasn't been someone that's been brought in and instantly inserted into the first team, which some people expected him to. He has, for me, been a distant fringe player, and I don't think that's unfair based on what I've seen so far, and based on, Caicedo, Lavia, I think should obviously be ahead of him. So then you get Conor Chukwuemeka, who I think a lot of us are very excited about. Yes, he's had some, injury problems in his Chelsea career, but I think when he's been on the pitch, there's a real excitement about his ability, especially as kind of a number 10, as that player can float in kind of tight spaces and connect well. The way he connected brilliantly for a goal in the FA Cup against Leicester. Maresca, that was last year. Maresca maybe hasn't got over that late goal by Carney, and that's the reason he hasn't played him so much. I mean, I just find the treatment of Chukwuemeka, who I think is extremely talented. I think he's also versatile. I think he's someone who could play as a number 8, as a number 6, which he did young in kind of the England academy teams, and then progressing as kind of an advanced number 8 or a number 10. I just think, why aren't you using this guy? I think it's a waste of talent. I think it's a waste of potential that Chelsea could be benefiting from in a big way. And for me, I've said this pretty much since September. I'd rather give those minutes to Chukwuemeka than I would to Keane and Dewsbury Hall. And that's, a mess of the transfer recruitment. But I really like Carney, and I want to see him get more minutes, because I think it'd be a real shame if his Chelsea career just steps away and he moves away in January and then turns out to be brilliant somewhere else. It's not like you can make a firm judgment on Conor Chukwuemeka as a Chelsea player. Some of that's due to injury, but this season it hasn't really. He just hasn't been picked, which I find really bizarre, and he is in the Conference League team. But let's go through the rest of the team. I've kind of jumped about there. So Jorgensen in goal, Gusto at right back, Tosin, Badiashile, Vega, I think will make up the back 4. Enzo Fernandez is now a B team player, and I think rightly so, but he really needs to find a way to turn around this narrative, not even narrative, but the reality of his Chelsea situation. Again, would a really dominant performance against FC Noah change everything? No, but I think for him, he needs a really good performance from Chelsea. I mean, he did have a good performance, I thought, an alright performance against Panathinaikos. So I think at this level, he can definitely dominate. It's just whether he can make that step up and prove a lot of people wrong about his Chelsea career. I think next to him could be Conor Chukwuemeka. I think it's more likely to be Keane and Dewsbury Hall, unfortunately. And then you get into the front three the three behind the striker, where because I'd rest Neto, I'd rest Noni Madueke, I'd actually want to see Tyreek George given a start here. If you're not going to use Conor Chukwuemeka again, Chukwuemeka I think could play in any of those roles behind the striker or as a number 8. I think Tyreek George is a player that clearly has been given a look in off the bench by Enzo Maresca, and because he doesn't have Sancho, I don't know why you wouldn't start him here. I think it'd be a really exciting move to start Tyreek George here, give him his first Chelsea start, see how he does. He's raw, but I think anytime he's got on the pitch, he looks like someone who wants to take a lot of shots, which positive and negative, but he clearly wants to impress, and I think this is the time to do it. Joao Felix is obviously going to start at number 10. I saw that actually in terms of goals per 90, he's top for Chelsea so far, which is quite impressive given he's not a regular starter in the Premier League. Mykhailo Mudryk has definitely been improving, and Maresca said as much in the press conference. And, I think for him, maybe you'd argue he should be starting against Arsenal, but I think, he needs to start here if he isn't going to start that game on Sunday. So I think Mudryk will absolutely start, and hopefully for him and Felix, they can do what they did in the last Conference League game against Panathinaikos. And Christopher Nkunku, who I thought had a really poor performance in the Newcastle game. I was absolutely staggered. He did not come off the bench at all against Man United. I think that was a blunder by Enzo Maresca. But he's fresh and ready to go for this game, and hopefully he can add to his goal tally tomorrow night. So that is my predicted 11. Those are my thoughts on the game. What do you think about the whole Conor Chukwuemeka situation, Malo Gusto situation, and all that good stuff? Let me know in the comments below. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea. We will be reacting to the game on Friday morning, and then probably moving on to the Arsenal game. The Arsenal preview will probably be out on Friday or Saturday, because of course it's a Sunday afternoon game, and I want to briefly cover the Noah game, whatever happens in it. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.